Hey guys, it's Shaylin and I'm here today with another video. So today I'm going to be talking about my writing process. This has been a fairly requested topic actually for quite a while. I wanted to wait until I was done my first draft before I made it. For a long time I was really switching around my writing process, trying out new stuff. I was like, do I even have a writing process? I'm not entirely convinced that I do have a writing process. I've written a full draft with this process, numerous short stories, started a second book. I have been talking about writing process a lot on my channel and doing what works for you. So I wanted to just talk about my writing process. None of what I'm talking about is necessarily what I think is best practice or what I think you should do. It's just what has worked for me, and if I've learned anything about writing over the past 2 years, it's that writing process is so individual. My process is very relaxed. I remember when I did my Q&A a couple months ago, I got a lot of questions about timing, like how long does it take to write a book? How long do you plan a book before you start it? How long between drafts? I don't have any consistent timeline that I write on. Honestly, every book is different. I've written 10 books and I've never used the same process twice. I'm a pretty go with the flow type of person in life, so that's also how I approach my writing. But at the same time, I also like structure. So the kind of general principles that I'd say I build my writing process around, number one being I make specific decisions for each project. I think it's much more important for me to make decisions as they come up and go, this is what this project needs right now, so this is what I'm gonna do, rather than this is what I always do, therefore I'm gonna do it for this project. So I'm always adjusting things based on my project, and more, not even just adjusting things, but like leaving the door wide open, not even making a plan. Because honestly, making plans wasn't good for me. I used to be more of a planner, not just in that I made more outlines, but like long-term plans, schedules, and it's hard to foresee exactly what my book will need. The second one is to just rely on my intuition. I have talked about before how I've been trying to just be like more intuitive with my writing, trust that, and I hope that like this video can give a bit of an idea of what like an intuitive writing process looks like. And then the last one is that I write more when I'm having fun. Genuinely, I write way better when I'm enjoying it. The quality is way higher when I'm having fun. I have more motivation, I'm more creative. I don't want to integrate practices that make me not enjoy writing. This is basically how I write novels and short stories. I kind of use the same process for both. Of course, the novel requires more steps and the scope is a bit bigger, but basically the way this process developed is that this is how I was writing short stories, and I was going through a really rough point with novels. Nothing was working. No novel that I wrote was working. I was hating them all and they weren't turning out well, and I was writing great short stories that I love, and I was like, I clearly need to change something. I looked at my short fiction process and I was like, how can I use that on a much bigger scale? But I'm mostly talking in terms of novels for this video. I've divided this video based on idea, drafting, and editing, so let's get started with the idea process. So this is brainstorming and basically just anything pre-first draft. It is very rare that I'm trying to get an idea or trying to force an idea. Ironically, really the only time I was trying to consciously force an idea was Honey Vinegar. That's like my biggest passion project. That's just because I was on deadline, but normally ideas are just an intuitive thing. Don't really force them. For me, I have more ideas than I have time to write. I would rather not get them. At the moment, I'm like, please stop. Ideas are different every time. They can come from anything, you know, like it's very hard to say like where my ideas usually come from or what they usually look like, because it's always different. And it's one of the reasons why I don't really have a distinct planning process that's like first I plan this, then this, then this, because every idea comes from something different, and so every idea develops a little differently. My ideas often begin with a feeling more than a concept. Maybe a core image, but like a feeling attached to that. Like it's not just the image, but it's how that image makes me feel. I find I have this like weird idea barometer. I can sense when I'm going to get a new idea before I actually have the idea. Usually a few days before, but sometimes it's longer. There is an idea, but it's out of focus, and it's like I can feel it. I can't always see it, or if I can see it, it's just like one fleeting image. I wish I could explain it, but I can't. So this is very fun for me. The idea is in this weird amorphous phase where I can kind of see it, but it's not really an idea yet. I call this the idea clicking or clarifying, where I go from having a mood to there being something. Like something clicks, and usually when an idea clicks, it's followed by about 3 days of rapid brainstorming. I always enjoy these 3 days. They're always like the best 3 days of my life. I have a lot of fun when I'm brainstorming well. When ideas are working, like the little hamster is on his little wheel and he is going, I'm having fun. Great times for me. I will see more images, see a setting. There will start to be concept, characters, scenes. I'll usually have a concept or the first half of a concept. Before I even know where the plot is going, I'll kind of have a feeling for what I want the story to be, like the type of story. I'm like, okay, so like for Honey Vinegar, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a longer time frame, coming of age story, integrating folklore. It's like this shadow shape kind of the story. The instant an idea clicks, I make a notes document and I always give it a working title because I cannot conceptualize something if it doesn't have a working title. Sometimes the working titles end up sticking, sometimes the working titles are really stupid, and then I just write down everything. It's usually like a few days where there's like a hamster rapidly running in my brain, and usually the first like 3 days, like he's on like some kind of amphetamines, like there's like a coked up hamster churning that wheel at an unbelievable pace in my brain. It's just like this constant stream of ideas. I can't think about other things when this is happening. My brain is just always coming back to this new idea. I usually name my characters pretty early on. Their vision of who those characters will start to clarify, like they're like coming into focus. I will sit down to write all these things down and just keep on writing, because the more I write, the more ideas I have, but it's never forced. If I run out of things to write down, I take a step back. For Honey Vinegar, it was interesting because I was drafting the book while this was happening. Normally though, it's just brainstorming, because normally I haven't started writing the book at this point. I like to think about form a lot. Form is something that's really like fun and important to me. So even thinking about what form I want to use, like everything from point of view to narrative frame, how I want that story to be written. You do fill out character profiles, however, I'm not very good at it. I'll usually like start and then not finish them. Character is, again, honestly, like don't take a shot every time I say it's just intuitive, because you will damage your liver. It's like a process of meeting them, but I know I'm on the right track with the character when I can just feel them. In my mind, they have a specific energy. This sounds stupid and fluffy. They have like a certain energy that I can sense. It's almost like a life of their own, and like I can sense who they are as people. Sometimes that's there right away. Sometimes it takes more time. The main character is intuitive. Important side character is intuitive, but I always I'm really bad at developing side characters. I find that like half my side characters will be really clear and developed, and then there are usually in a book like 2 or 3 side characters that just never click for me, and so then they never have a personality, and then when people read the book, they're like, does this person even exist? And I'm like, those are usually characters where I have to go back and like really consciously chip away at the character building. But I will start to fill out character profiles because I'm really bad at keeping track of like basic information. Character's personality might come to me intuitively, but almost more like the administrative stuff I won't deal with. I have gotten years into planning a book and realized that like I don't know my main character's birthdays. Things like that I will just not deal with if I don't actually go fill them out. So I will fill out a character profile, probably get 3/4 to filling it out, and then be like, I'll do this later, and then never finish it. Then it kind of just sits in my head. When I start the book is fully just dependent on my schedule. I have a long queue of books to write, and I would write all of them right now if I had the time, but I don't. For Honey Vinegar, it was a little different. Basically, there was a point in time where I had like a queue of like 20 books, and then I just cleared it. I was like, no, all of you can die. So we started at Honey Vinegar, and so because there was nothing waiting, I started that book right at the beginning. But while I was drafting that book, I started to get ideas for other books, and because I was drafting another book, they had to wait. The book I'm writing right now, Holding a Ghost, the idea clicked about 2 months into writing Honey Vinegar, maybe even less, maybe like a month. If I hadn't been writing Honey Vinegar, I would have just started that book right away. I'm fine to start a book with very little planning. I actually kind of like that. Like, I've realized about myself, and this is really sounds so dumb, but I like to be kind of confused when I'm writing. I think because I'm just like a very confused person, like in life. Like I'm just always confused about everything. When I was trying to write on my shit and like know what I was doing. It didn't work because that's just not who I am. It's not true to me. Being confused gives me more drive to search for answers. The more I know, it makes me like too confident. I'm like, I don't need to be consciously working on this because I know it's figured out. And that's when I miss out on a lot of interesting details and creativity. So I don't want to let myself get lazy, and I find that too much planning lets me get lazy. Obviously, this is just my brain. This is just how my brain works. I'm not saying it's rational. It's actually kind of stupid, but it's how my brain works. So I like to keep myself on my toes. I like to keep her guessing. So I purposely don't make an outline. I will have like a long list of scenes, but like I won't put them in order even when I start to visualize the order. I don't want to have an outline. I want there to be things that I still have to fill in the gaps when I get to the drafting phase, because I have to write more attentively, I have to be more observant. As soon as I have an outline, it's like, I'm like, I guess I can just write this half checked out, and it's not good for me. Obviously, solution is just, well, Shaylin, why don't you just pay more attention when you're drafting from an outline? But it just doesn't, I don't know why. That's just how my brain is. I don't have a set amount of planning that I need to do. I just do as much as my brain will naturally provide. My brain develops material very slowly when I'm not writing. The development starts to happen a lot faster once I'm actually drafting. While it's sitting in my head, I will often write a beginning just so that I feel like I have a chance to experiment with the voice. So then let's talk about drafting. So drafting begins, like I said, when my schedule allows for it. I draft all in one document. I recently updated Microsoft Word because Word was being really glitchy. I have never paid for Microsoft Word, and I never will. So even though I'm not a student anymore, the people at Microsoft don't know that, and so I used my student email to get a free download of an updated Microsoft Word, and let me tell you, focus mode is the shit. I write with the internet. Personally, I like to have a thesaurus, a reverse dictionary, and a research tab open while I'm drafting. I research a ton of stuff while I write, just to find specific details. I also write with music, so I have a playlist for every project that I write. Music just really helps me focus, and it's a sign to me that I'm really in the zone because I won't even notice the songs passing. Like, I will come out of my writing days and look at the last 10 songs that just played and have no memory of listening to any of them. That's a sign that the writing's going really well. I associate songs with my book, and so once I play those songs, it'll make me start thinking about that book. So usually I'll start my writing session by going through my playlist and making a queue of the songs that I want to listen to on that specific day, or sometimes I just shuffle the playlist because on some days it doesn't really matter. I used to write late at night when I was a teenager, and it was not good for me because writing makes my brain really active, and so it would make it really hard for me to go to sleep. So now I usually write early evening or afternoon on a weekend. I like to go for a walk before I write. Walking is when I get the most ideas, so I like to walk and then come home and write, but if it's like the winter and I'm writing in the evening, that's not gonna be possible because I'm not gonna go for a walk like by myself listening to music when it's dark out. So I usually start writing somewhere between 5 to 8 p.m. Basically, I just write until I run out of energy for the writing for the day. Rare that I write less than 600 words. That's about my minimum. Average day of writing would be 1,000 to 1,200. A good day of writing, 1,500 to 2,000, and then anything over 2,000 is like a great day of writing. I will have a day that I write over 3,000 maybe twice in a year. I've only written over 5,000 in a day twice in my life, so I don't set daily goals. I don't like to feel like the days of failure. If I write 600 words but they're good words, I can feel totally happy with that, but I might not if my goal had been to write 1,000. It decreases my quality a little bit when I write with specific goals, because then it's weird because I love writing, but as soon as there's a specific goal, my brain goes, well, you just have to get to that goal. And so then I'll just write to that goal, checking my word count, and suddenly it feels like I'm writing a paper and it's not fun. Before I start a new chapter, I will go through my notes document and pull out anything that I think goes in this chapter. It's not like in a specific order because, like I said, I actively avoid making an outline even once I probably could, because I want to leave room for myself to be confused. Truly, I'm at my best when I'm a little confused. I don't even really have a daily schedule. Honestly, rely on like my inherent motivation to write gets me far, so I'm fine with that. The only way that I set goals is, so I work in what I call blocks because I like to work on multiple projects at a time. A block is either a task or a group of tasks that I want to complete before moving on to the next task. And usually it takes between a week and 3 weeks to complete a block. A block could be drafting a set of chapters for my novel, draft a short story, could be revise a set of chapters, and I will often set a goal for when I want to be done a block. Now, like I said, I don't outline, but I do have an outline that I add to as I'm drafting. So after I write a chapter, I go back and add to it, and by after I write a chapter, I mean after I write many chapters and remember to go back and update it. That's drafting for you. Let's go into editing. Now, a lot of this is going to overlap because I do edit while I'm drafting. Editing as I go is a really important part of my writing process because it helps me manage the plot, keeping the plot from getting too messy and going back and resolving problems while I'm writing them. But in doing so, it also helps me manage my confidence if the book starts to get too messy. And so if I don't edit as I'm drafting, my feelings to the book start to go downhill because it's inevitable that the deeper you get into a draft, the more problems you introduce. And then what happens is I get to the end, it has had no developmental edits. I look back on it, it's just a mess and it feels so overwhelming that I don't want to work on it. I have tried to implement a system where it's like every 3 chapters I go back, but nothing that routine or set works for me as we've been over. I'm just too much of a free spirit. I basically just go back to revise when the time feels right, basically when I have edits that I want to make. For my last book, I had 3 workshops for the book while I was drafting it. Sometimes these developmental edits are just self-edits of things that I'm noticing. But having workshops did really help me to identify larger problems, things that I wasn't developing properly or things that didn't make sense, and also just give me ideas on threads I might want to integrate. First thing that I do is I make an outline of my edits, broken up by chapters. Under each chapter, I make a list of edits I want to make or problems I need to fix. Then what I do is I make a list of the order of the scenes as I want them to be, not as they currently are. If scenes need to get moved, if new scenes need to be added, if a scene needs to be deleted. And then I also have notes on scenes that are already there, but maybe if I need to change things. So fixing a continuity issue, integrating something. I go through the chapter and I move any scenes that need to be moved, delete any scenes that need to be deleted. If there's any new scenes that I need to add, I will put a square bracket where that scene goes with a description of the scene. The chapter is now in the correct order. Then what I do is go through linearly. So I start at the first scene. So I read through it, apply all the changes I need to make, and also touch up the line. If I get to a new scene that I need to write, I write it in. After that's done, I go back and I do another pass where I just read it all over to kind of smooth it all over. Once I'm done the book, that means that a large portion of the book has been edited, potentially multiple times even. So then I will go back and do any more self-edits I need to do, and then I'll give it to my workshop for feedback. In a workshop, we'll usually talk, depending on how long the piece is, between 45 minutes and like over an hour. The first thing I do is I read over all the notes I took during workshop and I synthesize them into like the key points I need to address. The thing about taking notes during a workshop is I'm just writing down the conversation as it's happening. I might have like half of a page of people discussing one point because I could take 60 bullet points. Maybe they only pertain to 7 edits, and then I'll read through people's written feedback, which again, I've probably already read through all of this like after the workshop, but just before my edits, I do this again. See if there's any like specific things that people said in their comments that maybe didn't come up, or they just phrased it in a way that really clicks with me. And then I basically just do the exact same process that I would do for my self edits. I would then look at other people's line edits as well. Once I have my whole plot in order, everything is set, I will do multiple rounds of line editing. I do like to do my edits on paper, but recently I haven't been doing them on paper. A few years ago, I would do multiple drafts on paper of my short stories because I just wasn't as good of a line editor. And I do notice more on paper. What I'm probably going to do for my novel is do one line editing pass on the computer. Then I'll probably get it printed just one time. And then after that, just do them all on the computer. I know I'm done line editing when the changes I make are very minor. So I can read through a whole piece, change one word and change one comma. I never get to a point where I read through and make no changes. I could make changes every single time I read through a draft. At a certain point, I have to just go, the story is done. That is my writing process. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.